everybody, Julian King here from the Table Talks podcast. And again, we're here with another episode of the Table Talks podcast, a podcast that speaks all things student accommodation wrapped up in a weekly segment for your enjoyment. Well, today we have not other than a friend of mine who served in student leadership back when I was at UKZN. And today we wanted us to talk about the role that student leadership plays in the procurement and the management of student accommodation. Amandla Majola, welcome to the show.
Welcome, sir. I'm quite delighted to be here today and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think we'll start the conversation, Mondli, by just introducing your background in student politics before we get into the business of the day.
Thank you. Well, as you have said, I'm Mr. Monji Matola. I'm a former student leader. I was serving in the SRC since back around 2017, 2018. I've also served in a number of student formation organizations such as SASCO, Youth League, and then, of course, subsequently at the governance level, the SRC.
Yeah. Well, Matola, as you know, that the Table Talks podcast discusses all things student accommodation. And today, we wanted just to have insight as to what is the role of student leadership when it comes to accommodation. Now, you know that a lot of accommodation providers out there are anti-student leadership because they feel that the SRC wants to shut down their accommodation and stuff. So, in your view, in your experience, what do you think is the role of student leadership when it comes to accommodation?
Well, I'm quite happy with that question, Mr. King, because for the longest time, people often they perceive student leaders as people who are anti-transformative or who are anti the progressive agenda. While on actual essence, it is the total opposite of that, because the student leadership that normally people talk about, it refers exactly to people that are elected by the very same students to serve for their interest. So which means students, they entrust these people to ensure that they are the ones who are going to be able to see if, for instance, in this context of student accommodation, they are the ones who can be able to tell that, okay, I'm a student as well, but in this capacity, I'm a student lead. Then it means, is this resident fit for purpose? Is it good for someone to reside here for academic purposes, for social purposes? Because we know that if you're at university as a student, there are a lot of factors and also aspects that you need to grow as a person. It's not only just you and being a student and only doing the academic work. You need to grow socially, culturally, and in all different aspects.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest conundrums out there that I experience daily when I engage with accommodation providers is accommodation providers feeling like the SRC think they own student accommodation. In your view, Monji, what do you think a typical relationship between the student leadership and the landlord will be? And I speak about that in the sense of how do we ensure that the SRC and the accommodation providers work in sync to ensure that student services are brought to the front?
But Mr. King, in most cases, I've already viewed that relationship as a relationship that sort of look like a triangle. See a triangle.
Yeah.
To say the top, we've got a university, and then we've got the providers of student accommodation, then we've got SRC, of which they connect with these two. They connect with the university and they connect with the student providers. So, looking at that perspective, I strongly believe that the student accommodation providers needs to understand that at the core of whatever that we do, we must always put the student interested first, because they are the ones who are the stakeholders in this case.
Correct.
Yes. So I do believe that should there be that element or that approach in terms of this whole issue, it can always be easy for them to be able to see that actually the student leadership themselves are always trying to work towards having progress. Yes, just so that the student lives can be better, while the student accommodation providers are also being able to continue with their business practice.
Correct. What is your view? And I know I'll put you on the spot. Single room, double room, or three sleeper? Which is your preference and why?
Well, I can say I'll answer the question in two ways. When I was still a student and the student lead at that time, I would,
Yeah,
of course, glad to say a single room.
yeah.
But now, I'm older, I'm a parent person. I think a sleeper is okay.
Yeah, and I think lastly, Majola, I think I want to just get your insight on the role, of course, that because understanding that student accommodation uh, is a bridge of the is an extension of the university calendar. Without the university existing,
Correct.
student accommodation then will not exist.
Correct.
And I'm glad that you raised the issue that the SRC in the triangle works together with the university or the TVET college and the accommodation providers. And I just wanted then to get your input as um, the role that you think the institution should play to support the student leadership's role in student accommodation.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, Mr. Kip. Well, I think it's high time now that we start to look at a number of things, for instance, in terms of policy regulation around the student accommodation itself. So I do believe that universities they've arrived at the level now where they need to take into cognizance that um, things such as the student accommodation summit, student accommodation in Daba, and all those things. I think they requires a lot of involvement from all stakeholders that are involved within the perimeters of the higher education sector, taking from the side of student accommodation providers, student leadership, and the universities themselves. So I do believe that because, as you have said, they are at the core of this. But the universities are the ones who can be able to pull strings from both directions. They can be able to pull strings from the student leadership side, while on the on the other side, they are also able to pull strings from the student accommodation providers. Because the student accommodation providers will be saying the university is the one that bring business to us, and they bring business to us through the students. Or with the students, they are represented in this case by what? By the student leadership. So I do believe that now it calls for universities to be able to gather these stakeholders under one roof, uh, precisely deal with policies and regulations so that everything can be able to be ironed out. And then from there, moving forward, I do believe that we will see some significant changes with great improvements.
Yeah. Lastly, the big elephant in the room. Understanding, of course, that the majority of students at institutions of higher learning are funded by the National Student Accommodation, that by NSFAS.
Yeah,
Currently, you see in the media that
lots.
things are not looking good
Yeah.
for the National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Your input, is this model working? Is it not working? And what is your view as an ex student leader in the space that you think can be done to turn around the tide that we're currently seeing with this first?
If I were to be honest with you, I would say confidently so. The National Treasury needs to sit down. In fact, this must have came from the president itself. Because I think everyone knows that in South Africa we spend most of the budget that we have from our GDP. We spend it providing health and education. Education takes both basic and higher education. So
Yeah.
those are major departments that consume a big chunk of the GDP.
Mm.
So I think the president by now, even parliament itself, they should have raised the issue that national treasure, please, these are the steps that needs to happen. The Department of Higher Education and Training, the debt, is the one that needs to be capacitated enough. Once the department is capacitated enough, I do believe that the agency needs to cease to exist. Yes, because looking at how the agency administer the entire thing, it doesn't look good, and it doesn't look having to give birth in terms of the near future. I do not see the future of higher education, if I were to say so, because most of the students they precisely rely on the funding from NSFAS.
Yeah.
And if you look at how the agency is funding students, how the allowances are paid, how student accommodation providers are paid. It seems like there are a lot of maladministration. So, solution moving forward, I can propose that National Treasury need to work hand in hand with the Department of Higher Education and Training, the capacity department, so that the department can be the one that manages this. Then the agency must just be scrapped out.
Okay.
Then I don't know about the employees of the agency. Maybe some
Last-
such can speak.
Lastly, Majola, the Internet of Things is rife. AI seems to be the future of the country.
Yeah.
Great advancements by AI. Do you see student accommodation in the next 10 years? Or is the model shifting to a virtual where you now can just, in the comfort of your home, attend your studies, pass? What's your view? Do you see AI playing a role in the extinguishing of student accommodation, or is there a need for students to gather together in one place?
In all honesty, I do believe that the high volume emergence of the artificial intelligence, I strongly believe that it mustn't be viewed from a negative perspective. So I do think that we must use AI to better student accommodation. And we must use AI to better the student life in student accommodation, meaning student needs to live a far much different lifestyle than students who were there probably in residences probably 10, 15 years ago. You understand? So I don't think it must work against, but instead I think it must work hand in hand to try to strengthen. What do I mean by that? A student coming from Nongo or from Nongo should be able to have a rest and know what kind of a rest I'm going to decide before they even arrive in the university. AI must be utilized.
Nice.
That's what I'm.
Well, Majola, thank you very much for your time. Well, guys, just a little snippet of a conversation that needs to be had, the relationship that student leaders play in the management of student accommodation. So for this week, we'll keep it at that. Join us, of course, next week as we engage in all things student accommodation. More guests. If you're out there and you want to have discussions around student accommodation, do hit us up where we can bring you on to the Table Talks podcast to have discussions that move the sector. With that, I'm going to say out.